I think you both feel kind of roughed up by this Mahomes Brady matchup as we've been talking throughout the day. I'm super excited for this Super Bowl.
Well,
This
of
is gonna be
course you
fun.
are. You're a popularist.
It's not even a popularist take. It's just because. So here's my thing.
I know. I'm
I
just messing with
feel
you.
like Mahomes and Brady is the finest football has to offer. Every game that they play is close, exciting, and honestly, just flat out ridiculous. So
Like,
the fact
okay,
that it's a Super
Robert,
Bowl just seems
I'll
insane.
I'll put it this way. Like, yes, it'll probably be a good game,
No, it will be.
but here's my problem, right? Literally half of the Super Bowls in my lifetime have been Tom Brady versus someone.
Yeah, no,
And
my
it
whole life
makes
has been that case.
it a little bit better that it's not the Patriots versus someone.
I think everyone unanimously has agreed with that.
The fact that it's the Bucks versus someone featuring Tom Brady. It's like a song. It's like you have like the Bucks with guest star Tom Brady on the track. So,
Can I also say you're right about this? Because this Bucks team, while everyone's like going crazy about Brady, we've kind of harped on this throughout the playoffs, and I think this game in particular felt that way. This was not a good game for Brady.
no.
It wasn't. It was 3 interceptions. And those 3 interceptions, honestly, if the Packers got one more touchdown, it would have gone another way. Those 3 picks, I mean, you got to get those picks, obviously, from Brady, but you got to score as well. I think that's huge key how this feels different for me as well. It's like, it is Brady's team from an interest perspective, but from a core football perspective, it really isn't, because this Bucks team is more about the surrounding pieces, their receivers, and that defense that actually has been playing well throughout the postseason. Shane, your thoughts on that? Because I think that's an important distinction from a core football perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of Manning in
Denver.
right in the year that they won the Super Bowl. Not that he's that bad this year. Brady's obviously better than he was at that time, but yeah, where it's really more of the collective effort of everyone else that's kind of carrying it, but it's at the end of the day, it's a quarterback league.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter how bad they're going to be. That's going to be, the face. That's what everybody's going to,
Mm-hmm.
just like we have been, right? So, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting because I think that Kansas City's defense is honestly probably the worst of the teams they've played in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's not a good defense.
It's not. No,
their interceptions came off of very bad throws.
The only thing I'll say is as we talked about with the Bills last week and how that felt like the best defensive performance the Bills had, this was the best defensive performance the Chiefs had in terms of coverage.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of those sacks, a lot of things that got Josh Allen flustered was they were trying to do similar things, right? Allen was going out in the pocket, going to the left more often than not. Guys weren't open. So in terms of their secondary, this probably was their best performance of the year. I would say for the Chiefs defense as a whole, this was their best performance. But to be honest, that's probably what's going to make the Super Bowl a bit weird. And I think probably the determining factor of this Super Bowl, and we'll kind of get to some of the keys of the game and stuff as we go along. It's going to be this Bucks offense against this Chiefs defense. That's really what it's going to come down to.
I think it's going to be offense versus offense.
Yeah, I think it'll be offense versus offense, and I think I think there will be one factor, I think, of the defense, and that will be the Buccaneers' ability, or not the Buccaneers, the Chiefs' D-line ability to rush the passer.
That ain't going to happen because Brady's going to throw the ball to Godwin really quickly.
Except you forget that Brady has a tendency to hold on to the ball longer than he should in key moments.
You showed that today too.
He will hold on to that ball, and unfortunately, it leads to him getting sacked a lot of the time. And this is a pretty good defensive line. It was better than I thought they were. They have some good pieces, and the Bills did not have a bad O-line. Like, they had a pretty good O-line this year. And they were just kind of getting to Allen tonight, just really disrupting him. And I think that'll be a big factor in it.
Let's talk about the builds of these teams, because I think this is something that was interesting as to why Brady chose the Bucs. This Bucs team at the beginning of the year was built to beat one team, and it's the Chiefs. I mean, look at their receivers, look at the tight ends, look at even their defense to some degree. It really is built to beat the Chiefs, but it never really felt like it got to a Chiefs level at all throughout the year, even this game today. And I think that is somewhat worrisome. Shane, your thoughts on that? Because I think this Bucs team was built with the Chiefs in mind.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense too, because, we all have been kind of sitting around for the last year thinking that the Chiefs are probably going to, if not repeat, at least be a very serious contender, right? And so, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, you definitely see a lot of similarities, I think, between the two, especially on offense. They both have two pretty good running backs. They both have solid tight ends. I mean, granted, Kelsey is better than either of the.
And mostly Brait. You can't put Gronk because Gronk's mostly a blocking tight end at this point.
Right. But the two of them together, do pretty well. And then, of course, there are three receivers against, like Tyreek Hill and Watkins, Cole Hardman, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so, I think defensively, Tampa has a slight edge just because they have in my opinion, the best linebacking core in the league. But besides that, it's funny because the defenses for these two teams are very different, because the Chiefs, I feel like, are really strong on the defensive line and in the secondary, but a little weak at linebacker, whereas with Tampa, I feel like it's kind of the opposite. So, yeah, but I mean, if you just look at their production throughout the year, Tampa definitely has the edge defensively, but I would say that Kansas City has the edge on offense because they just have way more speed, for starters. I mean, Tyreek Hill's a freak. And Kelsey is also, I mean, he's basically a receiver at tight end. And then, of course, Mahomes is obviously much more athletic than Brady. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be a really, really interesting game. I'm honestly more excited for Chiefs offense versus Tampa defense, as opposed to the other way around, like you were saying. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, as much as I don't like it, it is an interesting matchup, but we'll see.
Why do you feel the same way, Brandon, in terms of the matchups?
I think I do somewhat agree with you on the more I think about this, the more I think about the Bucs, they are sort of like a mini-me version of the Chiefs. Like, they're kind of built to match. Like, you've got fast guys like Chris Godwin. You got an incredible roster of wide receivers. Pretty good tight end in Brait.
There's a running back tandem too for both of these teams, like Bell and Edwards-Helaire, and then what they have in Tampa
I think
as well.
what it's going to come down to is like which team can keep up, because they're going to have to keep trading touchdowns, and if one team falters, I think it's going to be very quickly a situation where the other team will fall out of it.
As you bring that up, I think this is the key problem I have with the Bucs in this matchup and why I'm taking the Chiefs in a close one. I'm thinking about 7 points at this point. The reason why I'm taking the Chiefs is I think the player that loses this game for the Bucs is Tom Brady.
Really?
I think we're not looking at the fact that Brady today particularly has limitations. Now, I'm not sure where I don't know, Shane or Brandon, like what are, because I do see him regressing. I'm just not sure how to pinpoint what it is in particular. But I think this game, more than anything, showed those problems. Now, obviously, most people are going to mask it and say, oh my God, Brady won that game, whatever. But again, as we talked about throughout the playoffs, it's not really Brady that's made this team what it is. I mean, in some degree it has, obviously, you don't have Jameis there and him throwing interceptions left and right. But I really do feel like the one player that's going to lose this game for the Bucs, especially if I'm picking the Chiefs, is Tom Brady. I think the Bucs, so to speak, stops with him.
I would agree with that. And I think the issue with Brady is that, I mean, the guy was never very gifted athletically. I mean, let's just be honest. But he, he's always relied on his knowledge of the game. He obviously has a very high football IQ and his ability to throw and make decisions on the fly. And I think just that, I guess his, how do I describe it? His ability to think on his feet and make proper decisions in the moment and make accurate, well-informed throws, I guess, is diminishing. That's at least what it seems like to me.
I would agree with you, Shane. And I just pulled up the 3 interceptions that he had today, and it made me remember something, Robert. You and I had a conversation, I'd say maybe week 4 or 5, about Tom Brady and his ability to throw the ball down the field.
We talked about this the first week of the season.
Yeah, it might have been the first week of the season. Yeah.
It was the first week.
We had a conversation about this and the power in his arm and how his throwing power is not there anymore. Like, he doesn't have, and he's never really had that power. But he throws like he still is younger than he is. And all 3 of his interceptions were not bad looks today. They were not bad choices. They were just, he doesn't have the power to make those throws anymore. And he was throwing them, honestly, a lot like Peyton Manning, just like very high lobs, and that were just coming down really short, honestly, like either overthrows or underthrows.
Right. It wasn't even short. It was like short or long. Here's something important too that makes the way this team is constructed. And again, we talked about this earlier in the year. It is that Brady as a quarterback is not necessarily built for this offense. It just isn't. This offense is about throwing the ball deep and stuff like that. And part of the lack of decision making that Shane mentioned, I think, was evident today. There were so many throws that were very tight, but also some of the deep passes. I mean, how many times would a safety come over the top that he wouldn't see, but he would still throw it? Or he wouldn't see it, but he would throw the ball at the end of the day. The reason why the lack of decision-making is there is partly because there is pressure on this offense. Now, maybe this wasn't the case against the Packers or against Washington, for instance, whatever. It's you don't have to think about it in terms of the teams that they play. I mean, the teams that they play, they don't need to do this, but this is part of the reason why guys like Josh Allen struggle. Remember, I talked about this with Drew Lock at week 6 or week 7 about what playing the Chiefs does to a quarterback. And in this game in particular with the Bills, the one thing that frustrated me was, hey, why are you guys milking the clock? You're down by 10. You can't just dink and dunk on this team. And the unfortunate part is Brady's propensity or not even propensity, just what makes him the most effective quarterback is those short reads, but he's pushing himself to make those deep throws because I'm sorry, there's no way you can beat the Chiefs, especially as I
Right.
said, they're going to hit another gear.
And
And we'll
here's
get to that another gear part in a bit because I think
and,
this is another problem. But
yeah,
I think that's
here's his
huge.
problem. And here's the problem that they're gonna have. And here's what they exposed today with Tom Brady, right? And what the Packers did. I noticed this on all three of the interceptions. They were playing off. They weren't playing super tight coverage on the deep balls. Like they were kind of having a man trailing, and it's as if they were like daring him to throw the deep balls. They were
The safety would come in. The safety would come in at the last second.
And be able to just grab it on the if it was thrown, either come over the top and get to pick it off on the overthrow, or drop, or be trailing, or have the guy trailing him just be like, thanks for the ball. The problem is this. You can't, as you said, you can't play catch up in a boxing fight. It's basically throwing haymakers. The Chiefs come out and they throw haymakers. They are built to lead. They can come from behind, but it's very hard for them. They have to be allowed to come from behind.
That's the thing too, is there is going to be moments in this game where the Chiefs are down by 10 and they're going to find a way to come back. I mean, look at last year's Super Bowl as an example. I mean, I think the biggest thing here too, and in going to the Chiefs side as well, I wonder if it's a bit too late, because I talked about this at the beginning of the postseason. I said They need to hit that other gear. But I wonder if they hit it too late, because now in the conference championship week, we say they hit another gear. They should have hit this other gear a week ago. I wonder if it's somewhat too late.
But I don't know
how that's going to affect it.
Gear against the Bucs.
Why do you not think so?
Because this is a Chiefs team that has been scoring 30 points average in most of their games this season.
Mm-hmm.
They've averaged 24 to 30 points this season. I think if they put up 30 points on the Bucs, they win easily.
Shane, you feel the same way on that?
I don't know if I say they win easily in that scenario, but because Tampa actually had a higher average point per game this year than Kansas City did. So, which seems crazy, but it's true.
How in the playoffs was that different? Was that different in the playoffs? I wonder.
This is just the regular season. They had, I believe, Tampa had 31 and the Chiefs had like 29 points per game. But regardless, I this game is interesting because I could see it going many different directions. I could see it being sort of a shootout, I guess, and Kansas City scores 40 or the final score is like 42 to 35 or something.
Speaking of which, I'm going to search up the over-under for this game right now.
Actually, I take back what I said about them easily winning if they put up 30, because the Buccaneers they put up 30 in every game in the playoffs.
Yeah.
What does the Washington game? I guess the Washington game counts too in this case.
Yeah,
but
Washington
they put up
has one of the best defenses.
Yeah,
in the NFL.
they put 31 on Washington, 30 on the Saints, and 31 on the Packers.
Yeah.
So it could be a very close game.
And I think the Chiefs, like I said, have the worst defense of the four of them. So, I mean,
What is the over/under right now? I'm gonna see if it's up. It should be.
It's probably 7.
And Tampa has a better defense than Buffalo.
Can you talk about the linebackers for you? Why is the linebacker so important for the Bucs in your mind?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. For starters, They play in a 3-4 set, so which means they have, if you don't know, if we're listening, if they have 4 linebackers, as opposed to most teams have 3, and so they, because of that, their role becomes a lot more versatile. You can have guys on the outside rushing the pass, blitzing. You can have guys drop into pass coverage. And the thing about their linebackers is they all have pretty unique skill sets. You got a guy like Jason Pierre-Paul who used to be a defensive end, if I'm not mistaken.
He kind of switches back and forth. He even did that in New York.
Okay, yeah. So you got him, who's a great pass rusher. We saw that today. And it's, so it's just like you have, with a team like Tampa, who has the best rush defense, who is, enhanced by them, and a decent pass defense. I mean, it's it's not as good, but they do pretty well usually. When you have all that, it's just gonna make for a situation where I feel like Kansas City's not going to be able to run the ball very well.
Have they even run the ball well at all in the postseason? Let's be honest.
That's what I mean. If you look at Buffalo today, okay, Buffalo has a horrible rush defense, and I mean they could barely get anything going on the ground. So, I think they're pretty much going to have to rely on their pass game, and Tampa's going to have to as well, just to catch up with them, because the Chiefs are freaks when it comes to their pass offense. So, that's, I don't know. I mean, I could see it being, I could see it being like 42-35 Chiefs, or I could also see the opposite of that. Tampa scores 42, Chiefs score like 30 or something.
The over-under, according to DraftKings from Action Network, is 57.5. That's a pretty good line. That's a tough one. 57.5 over-under. Opening line as of 33 minutes ago.
Over.
Brannan, your thoughts? It's
What's the line?
The line opens at 57.5 over-under total points.
Yeah, over.
That's such a good
over.
line. I'll go. I think they'll just hit 60, so I'll go over. The odds for the game is Chiefs -3.5, which is, I think, pretty good too. That's pretty good, but that's gonna fluctuate. Always in a Super Bowl, it fluctuates. Yeah, it always fluctuates throughout the week, right? As bets come in, so it's gonna fluctuate somewhat. I imagine it's probably gonna finish as Chiefs 5.5, honestly. Because I think most bets are going to go to the Chiefs, especially on this line. So I think it probably finished at 5.5.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the Chiefs, but I don't think you can count out Tampa. I really don't. I mean, like I said, you just look at their previous games. This is probably the worst defense they've faced so far in the playoffs. Their offense is, despite the turnovers, their offense is doing quite well. They're being very productive, getting lots of points against good defenses. And, the Chiefs going up against a Bills defense that has been average at best this year. And they put up like the same kind of points as Tampa, a little more, but I don't know. And also, don't forget, even though he's not as good as he used to be, they have Tom, who is he's got his infinity gauntlet of Super Bowl rings. So
they've got Tom Turkey.
Yeah. So, can't count him out.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
I mean, look. It depends how this. I mean, I'm tempted. If I were a betting man, I'd be tempted to take the Bucks just because
And they're at
3.5 is
home.
pretty intriguing. The
Well,
Bucks.
that's a whole nother
I
game.
think that's part of being at home does affect the line by a point or so as well. I don't know. That's interesting. Brandon, speak on that home field advantage too, because it's something we've talked about throughout the playoffs about some of the importance of home field advantage. But I think in this Super Bowl in particular, even though there's going to be 22,000 fans in the stands, like that is going to affect the game in Tampa's favor a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of fans. However, one of the things that I think will balance it out is there's going to be a lot of medical workers there.
It's only so you have 32 teams in the NFL, 4 tickets per team, but that's I think 7,500 go to medical workers. Props for all the great work they've been doing, of course. But it's four tickets per all the 32 teams, and the rest is Tampa area. So that's
let's see that I got a problem with.
Yeah.
It's pretty BS that you're. I get that they want to have people in the stands for the Super Bowl, but it is basically for the first time we're having a Super Bowl that is not neutral site, and
obviously they can't do anything about it. This was done 3 years ago.
Right. But like
back when Tampa sucked.
That's true. That is true.
And that's the thing. If you think about the team, if you think about where they host games, a lot of the time, if you think about it, they pick sites that they're like, there's no way this team is gonna end up being in the game.
Other than New Orleans, maybe
Cardinals. Okay, I mean, but at the time they were like, there's like a very low chance that New Orleans makes it.
Miami,
Giants, Miami, now, Cardinals, New Orleans, whatever. But they would like
Houston,
Arizona,
Dallas,
right.
in some ways,
Indy,
yeah.
But like I don't know.
It's a unique circumstance. That's part of it too.
It is a unique circumstance. But then you also have the fact that they're doing the 2-day thing.
Talk about that, because this is definitely frustrating.
So
for sure.
this is there's going to be some backlash from this. You like I already know tomorrow it's going to be a big story, and if it's not, then someone is messing up.
Well, props to us for doing it then.
Yeah. It's so basically the NFL announced after it came out on ESPN.com.
This was like 2 days ago, though. Didn't it come out?
No, it came out today.
It came out today.
After the Buccaneers won, there was an ESPN.com article, and I'm just checking to see just to make sure that it didn't come out 2 days ago. But it came out, and it said.
I'll see if I can pull it up.
Yeah. Basically, it said that they are going to be limiting teams getting to the game to Tampa until 2 days before.
Other than, of course, the Bucks, who are going to be traveling back tonight.
So, yeah, here's an article from Yahoo.com. NFL changes schedule, and this was today at 8:40. This morning at 8:45 a.m. NFL changes schedule for Super Bowl teams could give Bucks advantage. So, the winner of Sunday's AFC Championship won't arrive until at least February 5th, 2 days before the Super Bowl, which is as early as they're allowed.
So here's my problem with this, first off, before you go. One is this is the fault of the PA more so than anybody. I think the NFL as a whole, but I think more so the PA. One thing that has been very clear from the Players Association standpoint is we do not want to have a bubble. But they never came to an agreement to say, let's have a Super Bowl bubble, which would make a lot of sense for a couple of reasons. One is my biggest concern, and we've seen this, of course, throughout the regular season, is that someone might test positive and, they can move a game. They can move it to Wednesday. And they're not going to do that for the Super Bowl. They're not going to move it to a random Wednesday afternoon. But what I'm saying is that I think there is a possibility that could happen. Now, obviously, prayers that it doesn't happen, but it could. So why would they take any chances to do this? Why wouldn't they just make them travel to Tampa on a Tuesday? I think Tuesday or Wednesday would be fair for the Chiefs. They put them in a bubble and they practice on the Tampa Bay sites as they would do a normal Super Bowl. Normally they come in on a Thursday. Let's have them come in on a Wednesday, and let's have them actually be in a bubble scenario for a week and a half.
Right.
To avoid this issue. But then again, the PA and the NFL clearly have not talked about that.
Yeah.
And I imagine that if this was announced today, the PA and the NFL would have had to agree on this as well.
Yep.
So that's part of it too.
And honestly, in a way, we're lucky because the Chiefs are in the middle of the country. They're not a West Coast team, so they're not having to fly from one side of the country all the way to the other side of the country. It's only half the country. It's a very short flight. But it still nonetheless gives the Buccaneers an advantage. Because if you're thinking about it, if they're flying in 2 days before, that's basically 1 day for flying, 1 day for practice.
Well, they're not going to practice at that period. Practicing periods normally the week before or early in the week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
But if you think about it, 1 day for flying in, 1 day for getting used to the I can guarantee you they're at least doing walkthroughs. They're at least doing something on the fields. They're looking at the field, testing the field, seeing how it, whatever. There is a huge difference, and there's also another thing we're thinking about here, right? This is Raymond James Stadium. This is the home field for the Buccaneers.
It's not going to look like it, though.
It's not going to look like it, but it is. I can tell you, as having played sports, your home court, it feels comfortable. You know how the floor bends a little bit different. You know
they're going to be in the home locker room. You're going to still be like in that.
Where spots on the ground kind of step differently.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm being a little crazy and paranoid about this, but like, it really does make a difference when it's not just neutral ground.
It does make a difference. Obviously, again, unique situation. But I think the one thing, regardless that the Bucs are playing at home, let's just ignore that for a second. My biggest problem is the fact that the Chiefs, or even if it was a different NFC team, let's say the Packers, for instance, they should not be flying in 2 days before.
Right.
They shouldn't. They should, if nothing else, fly them out Thursday or Friday or Pro Bowl weekend like they normally do. It just doesn't make sense. Shane, your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, I mean, another big thing about all this is that, when they're doing all their training and studying and whatever the night before, resting, the Buccaneers players get to do it in the comfort of their own home.
Right.
In their own bed. Mm-hmm. Chiefs have to do it by themselves in a hotel room.
And they're going to be stuck in the hotel room. They're not going to be able to leave.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like...
I don't think the Bucs are either, but I'm not sure about that stipulation yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, who wants to be in a hotel in a scenario like that when the other team gets to chill out in their crib,
I mean, I said at the beginning of the season that I wouldn't put an asterisk on the Super Bowl, but honestly, if the Chiefs end up winning, or if the Bucs end up winning, there seems to be evidence that there could be asterisk worthy.
There would be a little bit.
Maybe half an asterisk.
I would say maybe a quarter. I don't think it's. I think it will make a difference, as it should.
Yeah.
Home field advantage is everything in the NFL, as it is.
Maybe like sport. A cliff note.
Yeah, maybe. I think ultimately it will be a cliff note because it's a historical cliff note at the end of the day.
It'll be like, this was played with a shit ton of advantage.
no, but it's no, but I think it's funny that you bring up Cliff Notes because people are going to be studying Super Bowl history in classes. Like
Yeah.
Cliff Note, who was the first team to play at home or
Yeah,
whatever.
that'll be trivia.
But I mean, but honestly, yeah, it's an advantage, obviously. But again, this stuff has been decided before. The only thing that makes it rough for me is just I feel a bit more concerned now because it's the Super Bowl, because we don't want any schedule mishaps. I don't know, and I hope there is some seriousness to this. Obviously, the teams are going to take it seriously, both the Bucs and the Chiefs, but I worry from an NFL standpoint how serious these protocols are going to look like for this event, particularly because luckily it hasn't happened yet, but you never know. It could get rescheduled. And I think that's a real concern. But that's the problem. If you have 2 weeks, if you're going to fly them out 2 days before, it doesn't really make sense to me. I think that the COVID thing is actually a real concern, as it has been the whole year, but this game especially, because you don't want it rescheduled. You don't want you don't want a random wide receiver playing quarterback. You don't want those issues. And I think that needs to be a real concern. And it's obviously going to be a concern from the teams, but I wonder from a league perspective how that's going to look. Because clearly that hasn't been as considered as it should, not only from the NFL side, but even the PA side, that this is even happening this way. Because the PA, I think, has some responsibility there, because I don't think this decision was made by the league without the PA's consent. If it was, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's my overall point on that.